Good morning, everyone. It's Tess, and today is going to be tip 212. And today I was looking at, we all hear the statement that where your energy flows, where your attention goes, what you think about is where your energy flows or where your mind focuses, and what you tend to materialize in life. And I've been hearing that in multiple areas and in multiple groups, and Dr. talks about it a lot. Zahar Mahoon talks about it a lot. Tony Robbins talks about it. All the self-help people talk about it. And I looked up this idea because it makes it almost sound like it's easy. If you think about it, you can, if you want to think about it, and it will be there. And I thought, well, is there any science behind this? Just because I tend to like to do that kind of stuff. And interestingly, I found an article called What You Focus On is What Becomes Powerful, and Why Your Thoughts and Feelings Matter. And I think this is true because even in the past year, working with meditation and working with positive I am affirmations, I'm finding that life becomes easier when I think in a more positive way. And what I found really interesting is this article talked about the fact that science is studying something called experience-driven neuroplasticity. And it's caught, the research is around and has caught fire, and the findings are powerful. And what they say is that experiences change the brain. There's been a lot of work lately that they know that the brain does continue to change and evolve and develop as we get older. It's not like at the time we're 3 years old, it never changes. That's not true. They're finding that our brain will change. And what they were kind of saying is, again, I'm not medical, so I can't give you a lot of details on this, or even in the psychological arena. That's not my specialty either. But what they were kind of saying is how it works is that between the walls of our skull, we have billions of neurons or brain cells, and they work together to shape us into the humans that we are. Different neurons are responsible for different parts of our experience, whether it's eating, feeling, sleeping, sensing, threat, firing up, falling in love, spelling, laughing, remembering, learning, nurturing. So you get the idea. But being human is complicated, and our brain is the driver. It's the leader, and it controls a lot of what happens in our lives. So this is an area where a lot of science is being done. And what they say is basically every time you have an experience, the related neurons switch on and start firing. And as this happens, these neural connections get stronger, and there's a new path that's developed. And they say that the neurons that are connecting to your immediate experience, what you're feeling and thinking and sensing, they will keep firing those new connections, and they form within minutes. And the more of these little neurons that are being developed, the stronger that area of your brain becomes, and the more responsive and effective it will be. So it's almost like improving, are we improving the center of our brain that solves the plot in a movie, or are we improving the area of our brain that helps us in our weight loss journey? What area are we focusing on? What are we telling our brain we want to work on? So it says, basically, every time we have an experience, the corresponding neurons are activated. Every time they are activated, they are elevated a little in the order of importance. Repeated and prolonging an experience will keep the connections between the neurons strong and ensure that they stay active. So I guess really it is that as we're thinking about it, it does actually, there are science that shows that our brain thinks about it. And as we think about it, then we're kind of problem solving towards it. So are we problem solving towards always thinking about I'm always going to be overweight, and I'm sure not wanting to give my brain that message anymore? Have I been guilty of it in the past? Yeah. So if I keep thinking on a failure note, then my brain doesn't have that drive, or it's not building the pathway to succeed. So whether you want to believe it or not, there's science base behind it. And isn't it worth a try? Aren't you worth the try? Isn't it worth, because if nothing else comes out of it, feeling better is worth it. And I'm going to say that I think that things have gotten better for me when I am putting myself on a path to think more positively. It says that experience doesn't just affect change by creating new connections in the brain and strengthening the existing ones. It also seems to reach into our genes, the tiny atoms in the DNA inside the nuclei of neurons. So again, I'm not medical, so I don't understand all the details of this. But what they're saying is there's a lot of development in the brain by thinking in a positive way. So make sure you direct it. And even if you don't believe it, you feel good. You feel good. And this is science. These are science that is putting this together. And kind of what they did is they did a test, and they were, again, brain scans, because I know that when I was tutoring, there were studies on where they looked at the brain scans of children that were, I did that multisensory sequential repetitive tutoring method that I had learned called Orton Gillingham. And what happened is they were doing studies, and that they would scan the brain, and they know which area of the brain is like language. And what they would do is they would scan the brain of students before we started working with them, and they would show that they tended to fire on when they were working with language, they tended to fire not necessarily in the right part of the brain. Well, putting them through these sequential tutoring sessions we did, they would retest them later, and what they would show is there was more brain activity in the area that allowed them to be successful in reading. Hi, Rachel, good to see you. So it was really interesting studies, because I can remember, you know, looking at the studies and looking at the brain scans, and it was really interesting that the more they practiced something, the more it rewired them. Well, this article talked about that, I guess in London, there's like 320 basic routes, 25,000 streets, 20,000 landmarks, and it usually takes about 4 years of committed study, but every taxi driver in London has to memorize all of those routes, all of those landmarks, and all of those streets. So let me repeat this: 320 basic routes, 25,000 streets, and 20,000 landmarks. And they're required to complete a test in order to get their taxi license. And so what ended up happening is they did a series of studies on these people before they actually started going through the training to learn these routes that they had to pass these tests on in order to, isn't it interesting, Rachel? I thought it was really interesting. And they looked at their brains before they studied for these exams, and then they actually re-looked at them, and they were looking at the parts of the brain for spatial memory. The posterior hippocampus, which I'm not going to say I'm saying this right, but that part of their brain was very similar to everybody else's in the world. Well, what happened is, fast forward to the end of the training, and they found that spatial memory area was significantly larger. The longer the cabbie had been on the job, the bigger that part of the brain became. The learning and repeated experience changed the brain. So they're saying our brain will change. That's why they're telling us in these articles, it is so important to be deliberate about what you're thinking and what you're doing, because you are reprogramming your brain. And do you want to program your brain to support your weight loss journey, or are you programming it to think that you're going to fail at it and give it the permission to let you fail at it? And I think that's true, because it even makes me uncomfortable when I hear people say, I can't do it, I'm too old, it's too hard. I have been guilty of saying those things, and that's probably why it touches me when I hear that. I don't want to live that way. I want to get the most I can out of this brain and out of this time here. So I'm going to try to be very focused on trying to use positive statements. I want to succeed at my job. I want to succeed at my weight loss journey. I want my employer to succeed. I want everybody to succeed. And I'm just going to continue to try to build and to strengthen those positive muscles in my mind and in my brain, because if it can help me, maybe it will affect those around me. I just want this to be the best possible experience, and I want it to be the best for you. And even if you're not comfortable with the science part of it, look it up, research it, and study it. And even the last possible thing is, if you live a life feeling better because you're thinking more positively, isn't that even better than to live a life thinking that everything you want to do is going to be a failure? And it was an article on science, and it seems like a lot of even self-help people are tapping into this now. So it might be worth a try. I know that things have gotten better for me, and I can detach from when people are getting really angry and negative. And it's almost like they can't connect to me if I'm not allowing myself to feel bad with them. And maybe if more of us get to that place, maybe we can all be in a place where we're living happier. So this is science behind it. What we think strengthens a certain area of our brain. So even if you want to look at even in a different way, if we're strengthening the problem-solving area of our brain by thinking positively and looking for solutions, I'd rather build that part of my brain than the part of the brain that thinks that I can never accomplish, so it doesn't have to even turn on the light switch, so to speak. So I hope you find this helpful. I hope you have a beautiful, successful day. I hope you find something to enjoy in nature. And I hope you come to this end of this day feeling happy, successful, and excited about what you were able to achieve today, and hopeful and pumped for what you can accomplish tomorrow. Make this day count, make every day count, and build a better life for yourself, because I think it makes that life expand to those around you. Have a beautiful day, and thank you. Uh-oh.